Conservatives have aggressively attacked students from Parkland, Florida, who have been calling for and demanding changes to our gun laws. And David Hogg has dealt with quite a bit of that criticism and those attacks. Now, I want to remind you all that David Hogg is 17 years old and literally experienced his peers getting murdered in front of his eyes because of gun violence. And so naturally, he would want to speak out about the issue and push for real changes. People like Laura Ingraham from Fox News are not fans. They don't like that and have taken to social media to attack the likes of David Hogg. A recent example would be a tweet that Laura Ingraham put out in regard to David Hogg not getting accepted at some universities. She wrote, "David Hogg rejected by 4 colleges to which he applied and whines about it, dinged by UCLA with a 4.1 GPA, totally predictable given acceptance rates." Now, she tweeted that in response to David Hogg's interview on TMZ. I'm gonna show you that interview now so you can decide whether or not he was whining about not getting accepted at these colleges. Take a look.
It's not been too great for me and some of the other members of the movement like Ryan Deitch. We got rejected from we got rejected from UCLA. And I got rejected from UCLA and UCSD. So it's been kind of annoying having to deal with that and everything else that's been going on. But at this point, I was, we're changing the world. We're too busy. Right now, it's too hard to focus on that.
Are you a little surprised that schools haven't solicited you? Because beyond having a 4.2 grade point average, you are doing important things.
I'm not surprised at all, in all honesty. I think there's a lot of amazing people that don't get into college, not only that do things like I do, but because their voices just aren't heard in the tsunami of people that apply every year to colleges in such an in such a really impacted school system here that we have in America, where people have to go into massive amounts of debt just to go to college and get an education. I think it's really sad, but it's the truth.
Right on.
I mean, let me open it up to the panel because maybe I'm not hearing things correctly. Did that sound like whining about not getting into the colleges that he applied to? By the way, he did get into other colleges, including Florida Atlantic University, California Polytechnic State University, and California State University San Marcos. By the way, he has a 4.2 GPA and an SAT score of 1270. Very smart guy, is gonna have a very bright future ahead of him. And again, I personally didn't hear any whining, but tell me what you guys think.
I didn't hear any whining.
No, of course not. He wasn't whining at all. In fact, even when it was suggested, hey, don't you think that the likelihood of schools coming forward and soliciting you is increased because you become sort of the spokesman or one of the spokespeople for this movement? He said, no, there are a bunch of extraordinary people out there, and I'm pleased that you might see me that way, but that's not, I'm really just in a sea of extraordinary people. And then he pointed to the problem in higher education, which I thought, is again what a great mind he is. He's clearly a future leader.
Yeah, he pointed out that there's a major problem in this country right now with higher education to begin with, which just shows his sort of his awareness to what's going on beyond just the issue that he has become the spokesperson for. Which I think it's worth reminding everyone. He didn't these kids didn't ask to be put in this position, and it gets so frustrating when you see on Twitter like, are you this or are you that? Like these are kids that survived a massacre.
Exactly, exactly. These are kids who went through something so incredibly traumatic, and they're victims, and they're fighting for change so other people don't experience what they just experienced. And it's amazing to me to see people on the right, Photoshop images of them in order to smear them.
Yeah, that Constitution, that was disgusting when they showed
Emma Gonzalez
ripping up the Constitution.
Right, which of course she didn't do, that was Photoshopped. And then you have people like Laura Ingraham who, I mean, what are you 12? She's an adult who's going after this guy, this kid, and making it seem as though, he's some loser who didn't get into these schools and that he's whining about it.
He's got a 4.2 GPA.
He's exactly.
He's brilliant.
I know.
The kid is brilliant.
Yeah, and if anyone in this story is known for whining, it's Laura Ingraham and people who are in line with her and her form of thinking. Because anyone who happens to go against anything they believe in regard to guns makes them lose it and go on these rants like lunatics. So anyway, by the way, there are members of the right, to their credit, who criticized Laura Ingraham and the way that she handled that. So I want to give them credit, because it's not everyone on the right. And I want to be clear that, unfortunately what we're seeing is the extreme part of the right kind of like represent everyone. And I don't think that that's a fair depiction of everyone who identifies as a Republican. So I want to be clear about that. Laura Ingraham is just crazy and an extremist, especially when it comes to this particular issue. Following Laura Ingram's criticisms of David Hogg not getting into every college that he applied to, David Hogg responded by listing all of the people or all of the companies that advertise on Laura Ingram's Fox show. So on that list, you'll see Sleep Number, ATT, Nutrish, which I learned is a dog food brand, Allstate and Esurance, Bayer, Rocket Mortgage. And then he later tweeted to each individual company and asked them, is Laura Ingraham really the type of person you support? Especially after she attacked me on Twitter. And guess what? A bunch of companies started questioning their support for Laura Ingraham and their advertisements on her show, and they are either pulling out or considering pulling out. We have Nestle, TripAdvisor, Expedia, Wayfair, Joseph A. Banks, which is a suit store, Nutrish. Nutrish actually tweeted and said, we're in the process of removing our ads from Laura Ingram's program.
And they said, we're so happy that Anna Kasparian now knows what we are.
Yeah, so I mean, people are taking action, and it's amazing how influential these kids are. They're so incredibly influential and
following
powerful.
this action, Laura has issued an apology.
Yes, so let's get to that apology right now. So here are some of her comments in response to the heat that she's receiving. Now, she says, any student would be proud of a 4.2 GPA, including David Hogg. On reflection, in the spirit of Holy Week,
spare me.
I apologize for any upset or hurt my tweet caused him or any of the brave victims of Parkland. For the record, I believe my show was the first to feature David immediately after that horrific shooting, and even noted how poised he was given the tragedy. As always, he's welcome to return to the show anytime for a productive discussion.
You know what's interesting about that is that I'm sure that they did have him on the show. Perhaps it was his first appearance. I don't know, but let's say that we believe her on that note. Yeah. It was before they knew the movement that was coming. And now that there has been this reckoning and this movement from these teenagers that survived this massacre, they're scared, and then they're acting as in an incredibly petty way. I just kept thinking, why are you punching down here? Like, come on, you have to have some respect. And then also, as a Christian, in the spirit of Holy Week, are you out of your mind? How about in the spirit of human decency?
Absolutely.
That's not what a Holy Week is about. Like, what the hell?
It was a self-serving tweet, and that's why she mentions Holy Week, because it reminds everybody, I'm holy. I'll remind you, and. Just to your point, Grace, quickly, they mention and attack these kids personally because there is no argument against what the kids are going for, which is responsible gun legislation. So they attack the kids because you can't attack the argument itself. But this tweet, an apology, is really a non-apology. It's one of those, I apologize if I offended anyone with my comments. And then she mentions Holy Week, and then she mentions that she had David on and was the first one. And as Grace says, it was just a rush to book this kid who'd been at the Parkland massacre before this entire movement was birthed. So I give her no credit for the tweet at all. It seemed incredibly self-serving.
She's sort of going down a checklist of apologies to try and keep advertisers is what it is. And I think that fortunately we can recognize just sort of how tone deaf this entire thing was.
Right, absolutely. And I want this to serve as a learning experience for everyone. And what I mean by that is it's okay to disagree about policy, right? It's okay to come from a completely different ideological standpoint and not agree with everything that the victims want. But with that said, there used to be a time, it feels like centuries ago at this point, where people could disagree with one another on policy in a civilized way, in a civil way. And right now, we're not seeing that at all. One of the issues with this Trump era is that any and all civility has been thrown out the window. And it doesn't matter who's involved in the discussion. It doesn't matter if it's minors. It doesn't matter if they're victims. It doesn't matter if they're disadvantaged or disenfranchised. There's just this level of toxicity in every political discussion and debate that needs to be dealt with, that really needs to change. And I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I do think that this particular story could serve as a learning experience for everyone.
Well, it can serve as a learning experience also from the standpoint of pressure you can bring to bear when people get way out of bounds. This president began all that bullying, making fun of the way people look, little Marco, I hate Marco Rubio, but the little Marco thing, and just the making fun of people's appearance. I mean, everyone he was making fun of during the debates, I hated, but it doesn't make it right to make fun of their appearance, attack them on the issues. But again, Trump doesn't know the issues, so he went after people personally, which is kind of what's happening here. And the last thing about this apology I will say is, this apology means nothing given the fact that there is essentially a boycott gun to her head, if you'll pardon the use of the parallel in this instance. I mean, she's seeing the boycott of her show by advertisers, and she's going, oh my God, I've got to issue the apology. So the apology immediately is counterfeited, it's bankrupt. And then when you actually look at the apology from all the ways that we've kind of broken it down, it's even more bankrupt. So Laura Ingraham is as vile today as she was yesterday.
If you want to get the whole Young Turks show every single day, become a member, tytnetwork.com/join. And once you do, you'll be saying,
I'm like a smart person.
Or you might say,
I think it's weird.
Or you might say,
oops.
No, that won't be that one. It won't be that one. It'll be great, trust me. tytnetwork.com/join.